The last session ended with steel and clamps in our hands. Harris drilled us on conduits, cutting, reaming, bending, spacing, reminding us that even a crooked pipe could turn into fire if we ignored the rules. Maria complained that everything ended in the same word, but Harris's voice cut through. Conduit is armor, clamps are guardians, edges are knives. Forget any, and you kill. Now the tables had changed. Charts, codebooks, and blackened wires waited. Today was not about bending metal, but about learning the hidden numbers that decide whether circuits live or burn. The workshop smelled of sweat and steel. But today the tables were stacked with charts, codebooks, and burned pieces of wire mounted on a board. Some were blackened and brittle, others melted into twisted lumps. Harris stood in front of them like a judge displaying evidence. Today, he said, you learn capacity. Wires have limits. Ignore them, and the result is always the same. Yes. He pointed to the melted copper. This is the language of failure. You will learn to read it before you create it. Maria wrinkled her nose. It smells awful. That is insulation turned to poison, Harris said. Burned plastic fills lungs. A man can survive fire, cannot survive what the smoke writes inside him. Now, questions? Whacked the board with his knuckle. 14-gauge copper. What is its capacity? 15 amps, I answered. Correct. 12-gauge. 20 amps. 10-gauge. 30 amps. Maria rolled her eyes. Do we have to memorize the whole chart? Yes, Harris snapped, because if you don't, you kill. What happens when you put 14-gauge on a 20 MP breaker? Wire overheats before breaker trips, I said. Maria muttered. Of course. Correct, Harris said. Older John, narrating. Years later, I walked into an office fire investigation. The breaker sat intact, never tripped. The wires above the ceiling tiles had melted into tar, were too small for the breaker. The company lost everything in a single afternoon. Numbers are not math. Numbers are law. Harris held up a chart. What does conduit fill? The percentage of space wires can occupy, I said. And what is the maximum? 40%, I answered. Correct. And why not more? Too tight. Heat builds, wires rub, insulation fails. Maria sighed. And fire. Yes, Harris said coldly. He handed Maria a roll of aluminum wire. What happens when aluminum expands and contracts? Connections loosen, she muttered. And what do loose connections cause? Heat. And what does heat cause? Fire. Fine. Fire. Correct, Harris said. We practiced pulling wires through conduit. Harris barked numbers. John. Maximum number of current-carrying conductors before derating. More than 3. And what is derating? Reducing ampacity. And why? Heat buildup. And what happens when you forget? Insulation melts. Fire. Maria groaned loudly. It's always the same ending. Because you always forget, Harris said. He pointed at the panel. What does breaker size protect? The wire, I said. Not the load. The wire. Never forget. People think breakers protect equipment. Wrong. Breakers protect conductors. The wire is what fails first. Remember that, and you will save lives. Older John, narrating. I saw a mechanic replace a breaker with a bigger one because his machine kept tripping. The machine ran fine for a month. Then one morning, the wires behind the panel burst into flame. He had protected the machine, not the wire. The shop closed forever. Harris handed me a burned piece of NM cable. The sheath was blackened, the copper exposed. What happened here? Overloaded circuit, I said. And how can you tell? Insulation melted, copper oxidized, correct? And what does the color of copper tell you? I frowned. Bright means new, dark means overheated. Yes, copper speaks. Listen to it. He handed Maria a wire nut, blackened and cracked. What happened here? She squinted. Loose splice. Correct. Loose means resistance. Resistance means heat. Heat means fire. Every splice tells a story. We spent hours with charts, matching breaker sizes to wire gauges, calculating loads, balancing panels. Sweat dripped down my back as Harris barked more numbers. What is the formula for power? P equals V times I. What happens when current doubles? Power doubles. What happens when wire size stays the same? Overheating? And when breaker doesn't trip? Fire. Maria muttered. I could have answered that before class. Then say it louder, Harris demanded. Fire, she shouted. Good. At least you learned one thing, older John, narrating. Once, I tested a kitchen circuit overloaded with appliances. The breaker held, but the outlet covers were hot to the touch. A week later, smoke curled out of the toaster. The family escaped, but the kitchen was gone. Heat is a liar until it shouts with flames. By the end of the day, the charts blurred in my notebook. Wire gauges, ampacities, breaker sizes swam in my head. Harris looked over our conduit runs, our splices, our labels. Finally, he nodded once. Lesson 1. Wire gauges law. Lesson 2. Breaker protects wire, not load. Lesson 3. Heat waits for arrogance. Code is not suggestion. Code is survival. He snapped the panel door shut. The sound echoed like a gavel. Maria slumped onto a stool, hair damp with sweat. So basically, don't be stupid, as Harris said. Stupidity writes fire. Tomorrow, we leave wires and pipes. Tomorrow, we enter the human battlefield. Construction site communication. And people are more dangerous than electricity. I froze. Communication. Words instead of wires? Maria groaned and muttered. People lie worse than circuits. Harris's eyes glinted. Exactly. Coming up next, Episode 13, Words That Save Lives.